Okay, welcome to Fast Intelligent Care. This is going to be our first episode in a 4-part series with Lizzy Parsons from Country Care Group. So over the next 4 weeks, we'll dive into assistive technology, looking at the role of a solution specialist, seating and posture, manual handling, and how to set up for a very successful trial. So Lizzy, first things first, can you give us a little bit of your background, how you came to be at Country Care Group and what your role is?
Yeah. So I've been an OT for about 14 years now. You'll probably notice I've got a bit of a funny accent. I'm actually from the UK. I did my studies over in the UK. And as soon as I graduated, I was fed up with the English weather and decided to move over to Australia. So I've actually never worked as an OT in Australia. In the UK. Only ever in Australia and also New Zealand. So my background is that I've worked in OC rehab. I've worked in rehabilitation in a private hospital and on the wards there. I've worked in New Zealand in a concussion clinic. I have worked in a community back in Australia with DVA, NDIS, aged care. And then 5 years ago, I started a role here at Country Care Group as a clinical educator and solution specialist.
Oh, that's great. So that's a very wide.
Very varied. And actually, I had not a lot to do with too much equipment until I started this role. So I was actually a little bit of a novice when I started the role, which was a bit intimidating. But it's amazing how much you learn over the kind of 5 years. It's been a really nice role.
Yeah, so you've had the chance to work with clinicians as well as the clients as the solution specialist. So how do you experience that? What are some of the things that someone like an OT might not know about what your role entails as a solution specialist within group?
Yeah, I'm pretty unique, obviously, that I'm an occupational therapist as well as a solution specialist. When I first started in this position, my role was kind of a bit grey as to where I could help out, because obviously you don't want to get too involved and actually be the OT as such for a client. It took a bit of ironing out. But at the moment, my job role is really around supporting occupational therapists out in the field, them coming to me with any questions or complex issues with clients, and us trying to work as a team to find the appropriate kind of equipment solution for them. My role is also to support them in kind of product training and just gain their confidence in the product space. Because I know exactly how it felt at the beginning there when I didn't know much. And I have plenty of OTs that come through our doors who, unfortunately, were in a similar position to me, where they're a little bit kind of a novice when it comes to equipment. And it's my role to kind of help them through that process, whether it be kind of meeting up and going through all the equipment and things throughout our showroom, or developing educational resources to assist them within the equipment space.
And with having worked in New Zealand as well, do you feel like there was quite a difference in terms of, because I know you said you were new to assistive technology in Australia. Did you have anything to do with assistive tech in New Zealand?
No, not at all, really. So my role over there was within concussion. So it was getting people back to work after sustaining a concussion. I was actually based in Queenstown, so not a heavy load of people with concussions there, skiing, mountain biking, etc. Equipment didn't feature as much in my job role there. However, I did learn that they've got a really good kind of plan in terms of wheelchair scripting over there, which I think, would be really beneficial over here. So over here, any OT can kind of script a complex wheelchair, maybe without the best kind of experience, while in New Zealand you actually have to jump through quite a few hoops to be able to prescribe wheelchairs. So you basically do a course at kind of one base level, and then you kind of work your way up until you're experienced enough to be doing kind of complex wheelchairs. I think that's a really good idea, because I think we here in Australia have a really big gap in terms of knowledge when it comes to scripting wheelchairs, and it can be detrimental to the client, and also it's awful for an OT to be put in a position too where they feel really out of depth when they're trying to script a chair. So yeah, I was aware of that in New Zealand, but other than that, I didn't have much to do with AT over there.
Yeah, it's actually quite interesting that you say that, because that's something that I've noticed coming from South Africa here to Sarah as well, is wheelchair scripting being a lot more like you do need to have further training in wheelchair scripting in South Africa as well. So the first time I was asked to script a wheelchair, I was going to pass it on to complex AT/OT, and she's like, "You can do this." And I was like, "Are you sure?"
Yeah, but when you actually get into it, I mean, it can be pretty overwhelming, right? Like if someone's got a significant, complex seating need, like if you, like what can you do? And I know I was in that position when I was out in the community doing my community role here, and I actually got a lot of support here from the store when I did that script. But to this day, I do reflect back on it, and I probably shouldn't have taken that on. And I always say that to our new grads that come through. I say, if you don't feel comfortable with something, always speak up. Because it can be unsafe, particularly when it comes to kind of complex wheelchair situations, when you're dealing with people's functionality, their independence, and like more importantly, their pressure care. It's really important. So I think New Zealand do well on that side of things.
Actually was wondering, because something that I've seen, and you might have come across that as well, is that physios have been moving more into assistive tech space. Recliner chairs, sometimes with even for pressure care, I've seen some physios step into that space, where I've seen it probably usually was more often mobility related equipment, but going into things like recliner chairs and seating.
And we've seen a lot of that here too. And we are finding that it is becoming a little bit of an issue, because they obviously don't have the background to be able to select the appropriate piece of equipment for someone. So, we do have physios call us and say, "Can you recommend a walker?" And then that's all the information they've given us. Same with recliner chairs. They ring up and say, "Oh, can you come out and do a trial with, this client?" But they give us no information. So no measurements of the person, do they have pressure risk? Oh, I don't know. Like they just don't, unfortunately, they don't know the questions to ask to be able to ensure that we can bring out the right piece of equipment. So it's education here a lot with physios as well, who have unfortunately, been in a position where they're having to do kind of the OT role. And we find that a lot actually in kind of aged care facilities where they, they've only got the budget for either an OT or a physio, and they tend to choose a physio. And so then that physio is trying to do the OT role as well. We've had some incidences with commodes even like pressure care cushions. We had one time where we had a phone call from an aged care facility where a lady who was was foot propelling in her wheelchair kept falling out of it, and she was on a Roho cushion, and they kept saying she'd fallen out about 4 times. And when we got out there, the Roho cushion had been so blown up that it was obviously causing her to slide off onto the floor. And because she didn't have foot plates, because she was foot propelling, she just kept falling off. And, they blame the cushion. It wasn't the cushion's fault. It was because, unfortunately, the physio had set it up and had no clue about roho cushions and had obviously not understood how a roho cushion is supposed to be set. I obviously thought it was kind of underinflated and then overinflated it. And that's then caused an issue for this resident. Like, luckily she didn't injure herself, but if she had a pressure injury, that could have caused, even worse, shearing off the side of the roho cushion onto the floor, and it's because, they're using equipment, which they're not trained for. Yeah. So, I've got no qualms with physios being in that kind of space. It's just that's I guess what they're not trained for. So, yeah, I think it's important that aged care facilities where they can really have both, a physio and OT, because they work so well together in achieving someone's goals and being able to bounce off each other and everything. So it's a very solo gig, I think, if you're on your own, trying to do both, span both roles, really.
With that type of situation where you've had a therapist, let's say physio or an OT, that has had a trial set up, or they've requested a specific product, and with your expertise as an occupational therapist and having so much experience with assistive tech, has there ever been a moment where your input had kind of changed the direction that the trial went? Maybe even like preventing a misstep, preventing from going wrong?
Yeah. So I a lot of the OTs that come in to see us, most of them are pretty experienced, but I guess really in the kind of new grad space, we have a lot of OTs, new grad OTs that come in and they're not very familiar with AT equipment, and particularly around pressure care. I kind of find that I have to have a little bit of an input. My experience with some of the new grads is that they kind of come in, for example, if we're talking about recliner lift chairs, they'll come in with a client, and they'll kind of get the client to guide them to what chair they want, rather than kind of asking the right questions to kind of guide the client to a particular chair. I mean, obviously client input is super important, right? Like, they obviously have choice as well, but the point of the occupational therapist is to ensure that their clinical needs are met by a piece of equipment. And yeah, I find that the new graduates can sometimes be obviously not that confident to be able to guide that process. And that's where I kind of come in with some of the questions. It's obviously a fine line, because it's not my place to, take that trial forward. But where I can, I kind of offer that support. And when it comes to those chairs, like, asking some important questions around pressure care and things, they may have been heading off to kind of one chair which was fabric and did not have tilt in space in it, or something like that. And then you find out with more questions that this person's got like swollen feet or swollen legs, that they might be susceptible to a pressure injury. And then obviously, they're then heading off kind of towards an inappropriate piece of equipment. So yeah, I've had to guide quite a few kind of new OTs in that space. Generally, I mean, I don't think I've ever had anyone, a new OT, not appreciate my input, which has been nice. And afterwards, we always have a bit of a discussion, and I find out that they're not feeling that confident. And that's where I can be like, well, come in, we can go through all the chairs, we can go, talk about how you can fit someone for one and what questions we need to be asking. As long as you know these kind of basics, you can then, it will really help you in choosing the right piece of equipment or the right chair.
I think I've also found with OTs, they're always so open to learning new things. And I think we all know that there's just so much equipment out there. There's so much, so many different conditions. We can't know it all. And I think I have seen as well that OTs are very open to input.
And I think when I do speak to the new OT grads, or we do have like college or university students come in, OT students come in as well. And I always talk to them about not worrying about having to know everything. It's just not possible. Like our role is so varied. If you put me now in a pediatric space and ask me to do some therapy with some small children, I would have no clue. So, it's just such a varied space. You can't know everything. And when it comes to equipment, there's thousands and thousands of pieces of equipment. We're just one company. There's loads of other mobility and healthcare equipment suppliers out there, and we all do different pieces of equipment. So it's really important to understand, like, don't put too much pressure on yourself that you need to know everything, because you just can't. And I think that's where it's really important to have a good relationship with your equipment supplier, and be okay with asking for help, and be okay with saying, look, I've got this trial coming up, I don't really understand this piece of equipment, and I'd really like to know more about it before I head out there. Because that's another issue, is that we quite often we go out to trials, and then we've got OTs that aren't confident with the piece of equipment that we've brought out, and then it ends up us kind of leading that trial. So I think it's important to kind of put your hand up and be like, I need to know more about this. Yeah. And like, that's what we're here for. We're a knowledge bank, like OTs are knowledge banks of their client. It's their role to gather as much information as they can, to be able to, assist us in helping them in choosing the right piece of equipment.
So would you say the advice you'd give to those new grads or any OT that's a bit unsure or unfamiliar with equipment or not confident with equipment prescription, that they should reach out to their local first, familiarize with the product that they are wanting to trial?
Yeah, definitely. So like, we're pretty lucky here. Within Country Care, we have what we call solution specialists, which is what part of my job is. And that role is being kind of really knowledgeable about the equipment we have and being able to assist OTs with that. So it's our job to kind of educate people on equipment, including OTs. So yeah, they shouldn't be afraid to come in and ask. I'm not sure. I presume in the other equipment supply spaces, there'd be people like us as well. So yeah, it's just always important to ask, because you learn then as well.
Like you said, the OT shouldn't feel bad for not knowing everything. Like, they're going to be the expert on the client. They know.
That's right.
You guys are going to be the expert on the product.
Yeah.
And it's good if they know about what is out there and know a little bit about how to script it. But I always tell OTs, you don't have to know all the wheelchairs that are out there. You don't need to know, all the different brands, all the different, there's always going to be more stuff coming out.
That's right. Yeah, you can't know it all. I think that's an important point to make as well. Is that, we're obviously the specialists in terms of the equipment, but like you said, OTs are the specialists when it comes to their clients, right? Because they've done their initial assessments with the clients. They're constantly understanding the changes in the client. They know more than we do. So when it comes to kind of trials, it's super important that we get as much information, relevant information as we can to be able to supply, the right piece of equipment, particularly when we're doing home trials. So when someone's coming into the store, it's not so much of an issue because they're bringing the person in. The equipment's all there. You can try this. If it doesn't work, move on to a next piece of equipment. It makes it very easy. But we're obviously aware that not everyone can come into the store. People can't come in. But it's those home trials that we struggle a bit with OTs, because they're not able to give us the information that we need. So even from the basics, just someone's body measurements, understanding someone's measurement, their hip, the widest part of the hip. So we have an idea if they need a wheelchair, like what size wheelchair, what size recliner, or the measurement from the floor to the popliteal, or from, the base of the spine to just to the top of the shoulder, and things for seat height. All these kind of things are just super basic. But you'd be surprised how many times we get contacted to go out and do a trial, and the OT has unfortunately not got any of that information. So yeah, when it comes to trials, if they can please give us those basic measurements, would be really useful. And also, relevant information, like has the person got pressure injury, or have what their seating needs like, those kind of things, particularly around kind of wheelchairs and seating, because obviously that's super important. But yeah, I'm really, I think there should maybe be what's the word, like an initial assessment that's used by everyone everywhere, that covers everything. Because I think maybe everyone's initial assessment forms are all slightly different. And, some of the stuff is, some of the crucial stuff is being kind of missed out here. So, and it's kind of it makes it hard for the client as to right, because the OT then contacts us and says, oh, we need, I need a wheelchair, but then hasn't given us any measurements. And then us going back to them and saying, oh, have you got these measurements? Oh, no, I haven't got them. They then have to go back to the client and get them. It just kind of, is a bit tricky. So having something cohesive would be great, so that everyone could do that. We have thought about providing our own kind of forms in-house. We do have a wheelchair referral form, for example, that a lot of our OTs have, and we just ask them to have it on them all the time, so that if they go out to someone's house and you find out that person needs a wheelchair, then they've got that form there that asks everything that we need, and then they can fill that all in, take the photos that we require, and those kind of things, the measurements we need, so that then when they come back to us and ask us about options of chairs, we can give them all the options. We can organize a trial, and it kind of runs a lot more smoothly.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's like saving a lot of time in the long run
for everyone. Yeah, I mean, there has been incidences where we have turned up. We've been asked to bring equipment out, and we've turned up, and the OT is doing the initial assessment with the person, so they've not even met the person yet. And they just guessed what equipment to bring out. And then obviously the equipment's been wrong. And then we've, and some of the equipment can be big stuff, like recliner chairs, mattresses, like the guys have had to carry them upstairs and stuff like that. And then it's not been at all appropriate. And then they've had to go back again. So yeah, I've definitely seen some things. It's interesting it's the interesting being on the other side of it now, because as an OT out there, you kind of, unless you're in a company or whatever, and you never really see what other OTs are doing and things like that. So yes, it's very interesting from the other side.
You learn about all the different things that can go wrong, but then you learn from that as well.
Yeah.
Okay, so we will move on to our part 2, which will talk a little bit more specifically about seating and posture.